You're listening to The Back 40, the podcast for Ontario farmers, covering topics and issues that matter most to Ontario agriculture. Brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm your host, Mike Bryan. The ag industry has seen a lot of innovations over the years, from the 50s when almost everything was done manually, to the present where robotics have taken a much larger role in the farming operations. This automation requires advanced, effective monitoring systems and, of course, more complex and extensive systems to actually do the tasks. We rely heavily on electrical systems within the barns, and we know that the environment within those barns can be very hard on electrical components. Failures are not uncommon, resulting in everything from expensive repairs when bearings fail or shorts occur to fires with catastrophic results. Obviously, if we could identify problem spots before they became major issues, we could avoid a lot of expensive repairs and major damages. Now there's a company in Ontario that's drawing attention for a unique technology that monitors the health of the electrical system to find issues so that they can be fixed before they can cause major damage and expensive repairs. Aboutprevtech Innovations is the Quebec-based company that has developed this technology for farms. It's not just the technology that they provide either. They also monitor the systems to find anomalies and help the farmer identify the problems so that they can correct it. We're speaking today with Pierre-André Meunier, founder and owner of Aboutprevtech Innovations. Pierre, welcome to the Back 40.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
For some of our listeners that may be less familiar with this, tell us a little bit about Aboutprevtech Innovations, how you started, and what sort of services you provide.
Well, thank you very much. We started 4 years ago out of a number of conversations we've had with insurance companies, where I would say, more personally made much more aware of how many of those farm fires happen on a yearly basis. As much as in Quebec and in Ontario, we're very close to the rural environment. We only hear about these tragic events when they are reported in the newspaper. And, obviously it's touches close, but not as close as when you go actually in the rural environments and you can actually get a good sense of how many of those happen on a yearly basis and how disturbing they are for the community and the family and the producers themselves, and obviously the animals involved in these tragedies. And the insurance companies kind of led me to look into some of the reports that were provided by the Ministry of Public Security, which basically details these on a yearly basis. And I said, wow, there has to be something we can do about this. And if you look at other industries where electrically born fires would, basically not, be possible to happen because there are mitigation solutions available for those industries, I felt that agriculture and farm operation were underserved with a solution that was tailored for their needs. And we went about, the typical innovation process as prototype, understanding the complex environment that farms operate in, what types of equipment and the types of electrical issues. And we really started from the ground up and working with producers and having a detailed appreciation of some of the risks they are facing on a day-to-day basis. And we've developed a product accordingly. And that was I would say, the first chapter of Aboutprevtech, probably in the first year. The technical aspect of the business was, I wouldn't say trivial, but detecting and appreciating an electrical issue was the first step. And then was, okay, what are we as a company? How do we interact with producers to make them sensitive to these hazards and engage with them in such a way that without disturbing their already very busy schedule and many priorities, how do we make them engage into prevention? How do we engage with them in the right way, in a respectful way, to understand these situations? And where the true prevention happens is having the client work with us and bringing the right corrective measures. So that's the genesis and the story since then. It's been us genuinely understanding and showing interest in what's going on at the farm, what are the sources of issues and risks, and how can we help the producers mitigate those while providing the proper tools.
Well, your unit that you provide to farmers, the one that you would install on the farm, detects the electrical anomalies. But that's far from everything that you
Yeah.
provide as a service. You're really more into what sort of things can you provide from a service standpoint.
Well, the detection or the unit itself is a means to an end. It is a way to engage in the conversation with a client on the electrical network, and the electrical network being a critical asset of the farm. As all of us, we plug a toaster in the wall in the kitchen, and we don't really question how it works in the back end. We have an idea, but when you're running an operation that is powered by electricity all over the place, it becomes really the bloodline of all your operation. So, a big portion of what we do is bring a reasonable level of education and sensitization to the importance of this asset, and also making everyone aware that these assets or the electrical network actually operates in probably a more hostile environment than any other. So high level of humidity, high level of ammonia, and other gases and whatnot, and also the working conditions of these equipment will decay these electrical networks and components much faster. So that's, I would say, the first step is just making people aware that it's a critical asset. It requires a level of attention and proper maintenance, and when attended to, that work should be done by a licensed professional. So before we're actually doing any types of detection and whatnot with the unit, it's really engaging with that part of the conversation. When we lead into the detection, well, without getting into too much technicalities, we're looking at an electrical network that has a high level of integrity so that the electrical current actually flows through its designated path. And if there are issues and leakage and whatever, how you want to call it, we're raising that flag. Not everything is deemed to be critical. Not everything is deemed to be important to a point that we need to stop operation or close breakers and whatnot. And I think from a service perspective, is to help the client assess that criticality and importance without making everything dramatic or everything a source of an additional stress. Electricity by nature is abstract. We don't see it, we don't smell it, we don't, touch it. Well, you don't want to touch it, that's for sure.
Hopefully not.
So it is an issue that creeps up over time for various reasons: humidity, junction boxes that lose their water seal, motors that have been running very hard for a long time and decay their insulation, things that are very typical and happen on a regular basis. When we're picking up the early signs of these issues, then arises a question which is quite natural. Is it important? Should I do something about it? Should I do something about it now? Is it crucial to a point where a fire will catch? And all these questions will, if properly answered and properly put in the right context with some assistance, will help the client to dramatize or de-dramatize things. And we feel that it's important to provide that context so that it's not just something that rings or sends alarms, but it also comes with a level of expertise that helps to put things in perspective and allow to put the right level of attention and corrective measures when required, without also forcing the overhaul of the entire farm or rewiring everything, because not everything is critical. And I like to take the example of this time of the year, February, March, you have a problem with a ventilator or a fan. Well, maybe the quick fix is just to shut it down for the rest of the season and deal with it in the spring. If you have an issue with a well pump, well, fire won't catch at the bottom of the well. But if you're seeing early signs of an issue with your well pump, well, it will not get better by itself. It will come to a critical failure, and that will become an operational issue. And so we're not fear mongering with respect to fire. I would say 99% of our discussion with clients will lead to the client appreciating on his own perspective the benefits of actually doing a preventive maintenance act before hitting a critical failure, which will result in a motor or a pump or a fan not working when it's supposed to during whatever processes that are going at a farm. And that's where the initial value lies. And obviously, there are the more emotionally charged situations where the issue and the concern or the electrical anomaly creeps up extremely quickly, like a cable that grinds itself over a metallic structure and shorts out, and the insulation catches on fire. Those are, I would say, critical, they're crucial. And what's important at that time is that knowing all the amount of other priorities and issues going on, dealing with livestock and animals and a complex infrastructure on a daily basis, that notification may just be, well, I'll put my phone back in my pocket because I got 20 other things to do. And that's where our intervention, the call in, or the extra relationship that we have with the client will help in drawing back the attention to this maybe more critical situation, which will, in all cases, lead to the fastest and only way to have a proper intervention and a true risk mitigation is the producer actually doing something about it. Let's not kid ourselves. The unit, the SMSs, the alarms, that is not prevention. What really prevents a risk is a client understanding and being appropriately guided through his understanding of the business, his own business, what should we do next to avert risk, and taking action. That's really where you avert risk.
Yeah, it's really refreshing to hear you talk about the monitoring aspects and the service that you provide there. So many technical advancements here. We end up with, well, somebody comes up with a great idea and here's a new electronic toy, and we hand it to somebody and say, here, go, this will help you. And you look at it for a while and maybe you can't figure it out. Maybe you do figure it out, but you lose interest in it after a while. What you're talking about is really keeping the farmer engaged with this. You help them by monitoring this. You help them by figure out what's going on there, and that takes a lot off their plate. They don't have to figure out this technology. They just have to be engaged enough to want to fix the problems as they come up.
That's a very good point because regardless of any technologies, when you have a situation and the unit rings because it's meeting a threshold or an alarm rule whatsoever, it will continue ringing. And that becomes a frustration point against the situation or any solution. And what you would do, and I probably do, is we'll take it off the wall. So we actually work with the client in throttling these alarms and managing the situation. So we have a client that's doing construction work, and the contractor comes in with a trailer and connects it to the farm to run a compressor. And that compressor is probably not that great, and it provokes alarms. Are you going to ask the producer to stop construction work because this contractor has a poor compressor? No, you won't. You'll discuss with the client. You'll say, well, okay, how much time will these work? Well, I got probably for 2 weeks of work. Okay, we'll throttle the alarms on that kind of entry point, and we'll work with you in following it. If it creeps beyond a certain point, we'll be calling back. And so they don't have to handle that. They don't have to go being upset with the notifications or alarm, and they know that we're on the back end surveilling it. And if it goes beyond a certain point, we'll be coming back to them with some suggestions.
I know from a technical standpoint, I would get frustrated very quickly because the alarm's going off and I fixed this, I've looked here, I've looked there. I can't figure out what's going on. Just pull the plug on it. But the real key to what you're talking about here is, okay, this is critical. This is something that's, we figured out what this is. We'll help you figure out what's going on and what's going wrong there, and then make a determination whether it's something that we fix, we can safely ignore, or whether it's a long-term fix or whether it needs to be done right now.
And I think one of the twists as well, which is important, is the style by which we have to do it. We have to be respectful. These are, as I always say to our employees, the farm and the barn is the extension of the personal property. So walking into those operations, we can't just tell them what to do and what the problem is. We want to engage them in the conversation, and we need to demonstrate that we actually care and we are interested in what's going on. And if you demonstrate care and interest in anyone's business, they start telling you about things that are going on, some of the issues and concerns that they may be having. And some of these elements will be the early clues to lead to the culprit that are generating these alarms. So the conversation is as important as, well, I would say probably more important than the technology itself. The notification is what prompts the conversation. What engages the client into the conversation is the fact that we demonstrate that we care, we're calling in, we're following up, we want an action plan, and the action plan is for the better good of their business, their farm, and their livelihood. And when they get that, well, I would say in 99% of the cases, we get the entire cooperation necessary. And that would probably mean, yeah, we'll get it fixed. It may take 2 weeks if it's deemed non critical and non important. And we have to be respectful of that. And on top of it, there's always this other kind of party to the equation which needs to be respected as well, which is their licensed electrician. Most of the time, it's a long lasting relationship. They've built the barn together, they've fixed a bunch of things together, they've looked at equipment to better the operation, and they came through suggestions of their licensed electrician. And in that case, we need to engage with a licensed electrician as a team. So a team of three parties, being the clients, the electrician, and ourselves. And we make the client sensitive to the fact that if you do your work properly by a licensed electrician, that work will be done. It will be guaranteed, and it will be done with the right parts. And if the electrician, in some cases, requires some handholding with the process of working with our solution or diagnostic tools, or a lead into some of our experiences we've had in other cases, that sharing of information also creates a bit of a intellectual and technical trust between the electrician and ourselves, because we don't sell pumps, fans, equipment. We're not there to go put our hands in the panel and substitute the electrician. We're there to help and add value to his work on the farm.
Do you like what you're hearing from the Back 40? We'd like to hear from you. Send us an email with your comments and thoughts to theback40@trilliummutual.com, or follow us on social media @Trillium Mutual. It's really three parties. It's yourselves, the farmer, and the electrician that all have to be on board. How's this been received by the electricians?
I would say at the beginning, with a certain level of skepticism.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to receive all those alarms, and we get that. And I think what's important is when they see how we manage these alarms, how we manage the client, how we guide the client towards working with them, it makes them confident that if there is something important, they'll be engaged, because they also are informed of what's going on with their clients. The electricians that do professional work on agriculture operations are very aware, very conscious of the risks that are around, running an electrical network in these contexts. And most of them are quite happy to be informed that something's going on. And the one that are actually proactive will also be calling in to see if there's a need for help. It is not an open ticket to kind of do a service call, not at all. It's certainly an opportunity to be at the service of your client and figure out if everything's okay at the farm and should they need help. Well, it's also an ability to nurture that relationship and support loyalty in that, I would say, commercial and technical relationship. We also provide tools in our solutions that are open to the electrician to use on site and remotely to help diagnose issues that are sometimes a little bit more complex to find, that are to do with particular circuits or particular equipment that are not driven by control systems and whatnot. And the tools that we provide allow them to troubleshoot remotely without having to actually send someone with a truck and time to figure out what's the issue. It can be diagnosed remotely, and then knowing what circuit is defective or showing issues, then you can send the right person with the right experience for that type of fix, with the right equipment, the right connectors, the right cable. So from the perception of the client, well, I got an electrician that's actually coming ready to come and do a fix and not just find a problem and not fixing it. And so he's showing up once, properly prepared with the right elements. So perception from the client is enhanced. And from the electrician, having scarce resources, well, sending a competent body to a site to diagnose but not repair is not sometimes the best use of the resources. So on both ends, there are benefits both to the electrician and the client in enhancing the efficiency of the intervention.
Well, we've all seen that where somebody comes out to fix the problem, and they get out there and they find the problem, and it's like, now I've got to go back to the shop and get the parts for that because I don't have them.
Exactly.
That's reasonable. They can't carry everything with them on the truck, but that advantage to be able to say, that's what the problem is. I'm going to need this and this, and maybe this, and maybe this. I'll make sure I grab all of that stuff before I leave the office, and then I don't have to go back again.
Exactly. Total. I can't say it better.
We've all had that service call where they're not there and they're not there and they're not there. Why not? Well, the previous call, they had to go back to the office and get some stuff and go back, and it took a lot longer than what they thought. And that's money. That's money in the farmer ends up having to pay.
And on our end, since we have no economic bias on selling pumps, fans, or whatever needs to be repaired, we are driving the conversation to find the right culprit. So it's really being thorough through the investigation from the breaker, the cable, the junction box, which could have just lost a Moret,
Yep.
which is a 5 cent fix, to a contactor for $40, to maybe that load, which is a $3,000 motor. But let's not jump to the conclusion that it's the most expensive part on that circuit. So since we're completely detached from that, economic interest of selling an expensive part, we're really driving a thorough process to investigate the entire circuit. And that leads us to develop some additional skills on our side. We learn every time we do an intervention with a client. It's also a learning opportunity to know what should we be looking for if we get a similar case at this time of day in a dairy farm and we're not milking. Okay, well, there's a logical approach to how we find things, and that is also a clear demonstration of our interest of what's going on at the farm. The clients understand and master their environment so well that they are the I would say a foundational place for finding these issues because they master their business quite well. So if you question them respectfully with interest, they most of the time will lead us to the problem just by a series of questions and the tools that we can provide.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking about the things that show up, not
Yep.
necessarily critical, but finding those issues. But you've had some real success stories as well on alarms that have gone off. I'm thinking in particular one picture I saw that came through of I think it was a feed line that was on fire, and your system caught that. That was a critical fix that could have been disastrous for the farmer, but this system caught it, and you were able to bring it to their attention and avert that disaster.
Again, good example, but I will kind of state that the success was in the client fulfilling the value chain of what we do. The unit did the detection job. The system sent the notification, but the client received the notification after a 10-hour day of combining in the field. Last of his priority at 10 p.m. is actually to, if you're talking that example, is to go back at the barn and go look upon an alarm. So the follow-up, the call, assessed with him the level of criticality and importance. We went from 0 faults to 40 times the level that we tolerate in terms of raising the alarm. And even on that conversation, there's this human aspect to the conversation, which is a tired farmer with a long day, and probably not wanting to have a Prevtech alarm at 10 p.m. But with a very short conversation, it led to please go to the barn right now.
Yes.
And I'm paraphrasing. And then obviously the success was in prompting that action, right? And then obviously the sequence and averting the risk and then investigating the entire circuit and afterwards and making sure that there's a follow through, not just putting some black tape on it and continuing. It's actually just making sure that it's safe for good, and the client's been well accompanied through that process. So it's much more than just the SMS.
But it's a real credit to the unit found it, the monitoring
Yeah,
caught it, and the farmer was, even though tired,
engaged. Yeah,
engaged enough to say, that's a problem, I need to fix that right now.
absolutely.
You started in Quebec, but you're starting to move into Ontario. You've had more and more units move into our province as well.
Absolutely. I've lost count in Ontario, but it's growing on a day-to-day basis. I think across Canada, we have a little bit more than 700 installs done to date. And I think what's important for us, since our focus is not on putting boxes on the wall, but scaling the business so that our 700 client is as well served as our first 50, that is the challenge that we are facing as an organization, is to make sure that the people we hire, the technical staff and people that are customer facing, care. So not there for a transaction, not there to kind of book a sale, of a unit, which is from an economic standpoint is not, a significant amount. What's important is the client needs to see that we actually care. So finding people that care, showing them the craft and the art of how we show how we care and how we bring the technical aspects and translate that into a conversation with the client is what we've been focusing on over the last 3 years now, aside from the prototype year before. And over the last year and a half and 2 years, we've engaged in Ontario. We're blessed in having extremely high quality clients across the board, people running fantastic operations, and have entrusted us with that monitoring. And we strive to deliver on the words of trust us, we'll be there, we'll help out.
Yes. The key to any good customer service is to find the right people.
Correct.
As you say, the people that care, the people that put the customer first, and that's not always easy to find those people in the short term.
But it is fundamental. Even more so, as you mentioned a bit earlier, prevention is not a 6-month thing. We needed to demonstrate that we are not a fly-by-night. We're here to stay. We're here to create new best practices around prevention. We're obviously starting on the electrical part with a simple product to deliver, to install, but we also have a roadmap of other features to enhance the depth of the preventive nature of our services. And when you're demonstrating that you're here to stay, well, that nurtures trust, and that's how I think we're gaining an interesting traction. And I can only, agricultures and farmers are solicited by a number of vendors, and I think it was important for us to show that we could stand the early test of time from a startup to an early maturing company with a sustained and maintained concern about these issues. So now we're dealing with the electrical network. And, in the very short term, we'll be kind of looking at other components to reduce risk on the farm.
From an insurance company standpoint, I mean, this has got to be something that insurance companies are extremely interested in. Anytime you start talking about reducing the risk and improving electrical systems, that's got to have been, you've got to have had some uptake on that.
We have, and as I mentioned early in the conversation, it started by being sensitive, made sensitive from the numbers, the sheer numbers, and the average cost of a total loss in a dairy farm or a sow barn or a chicken barn. There are dollars associated that are, I would say, important, but not as important as the overall impact it has on the family, the total life commitment to the farm, which I've grown to appreciate more and more as we kind of shared with us some of these dire experiences that people go through. But when you come back to the insurance company, we did start with that and a support from some group which have provided incentive to encourage prevention. As we've matured, I think a lot of it has been carried into new partnerships across Canada. And what we've also learned is what's important is not to sell the incentive or rebate or whatnot. We need to sell prevention. We need to sell the philosophy behind which we provide our services. So the last thing we want is someone to go to a farm and say, put this on the wall, they'll get a rebate or an incentive or a program of some sort. The idea is work with PrevTech, they'll work with you, reduce risk, we'll save you some downtime, we'll increase efficiency. If we can avoid a significant loss, great. And for a client to buy into that approach and the cooperation with PrevTech and their electrician, well, the insurance company recognizes that initiative from the client with an incentive of some sort. We're not brokers. We don't sell insurance. It's not our language. We want to keep away from that. But also the insurance companies are also the groups that show us where the risks come from because they have a deep knowledge of loss prevention. They have teams in place that are in farms that do inspections for the better good of the client to help out reduce these risks and save their livelihood. And they have a corpus of information of elements that are also kind of useful for us to better assess our capabilities and how we can diagnose and help the client in our services. So it is a true partnership where there is a shared knowledge going from side to side on what to look for, what are the best practice we can bring to the table so that the conversation we have with the client is enhanced with the knowledge that these insurance companies have built across their work and doing loss control for many years now.
Loss control and risk management, I mean,
Yep.
it's more than just as you say, a piece of technology on the wall. It's a mindset, and anything that brings that back to the forefront in the thought process of someone, it's got to bleed over into other stuff too. That it's not just the electrical system, but it'll go to other stuff that isn't necessarily even attached to the PrevTech installation.
Absolutely. Well, I think from PrevTech or prevention, the idea and the philosophy is we're on the lookout to also develop, but also work with partners or other vendors that have solutions that have been designed to reduce risk on farm. Just to give an example, we work with this Finnish company which provides temperature pegs to put in hay bales, a nice, simple wireless technology, and the intention is to have it connected with our platform. As much as they may not make the news that often, but instantaneous combustion in hay bales or haystacks are issues that happen occasionally. And in those cases, well, we know that that's another source of concern that producers may have. We get kind of crazy weather sometimes. You don't have as much time to dry your hay. You may be storing a few hay bales with a higher level of humidity. And there you go, you're in a risk situation. Can we provide solutions for that? Are we going to develop the entire solution? No. Can we partner with people that have ideas and blend it into a platform where we can enhance the engagement with the client? Absolutely.
Thankfully, we see fewer and fewer hay barn fires than we used to.
Yes.
I do remember when it was nearly a yearly occasion when the fire trucks would roll out somebody's barn that put hay in that was just a little bit too wet.
Yep.
And I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I was driving down a road in Ontario here, and in the middle of a rainstorm, and there was some round bales out in the field. And at the back, I saw one of them with smoke coming up out of it. Yeah. And it's sitting right there in the field. Like it's still a major issue in the industry there, that if the hay goes in a little bit tough, you can lose a barn pretty quickly.
Absolutely. So I think what I'm expressing is our concern to look at other solutions that we can tie into our way to engage with the client on making them sensitive about these risks. And if there are existing innovations to help out, we're the ones that are on the lookout for that. And that's in total relationship with the insurers, which are also on the lookout for these solutions. And then it's all about how do you integrate it into the daily workflow so that it enhances the interest of the client and the producer to engage towards the solution and actually avert risks.
So if somebody's interested in implementing one of your solutions on their farm, how do they find you and who do they get in touch with?
Well, I would guide them to our website. All the information is there. There's testimonials, and the website would be prevtech.ca. So Prev for prevention, tech, so PREVTECH.ca. All the phone numbers are there, contact points necessary to reach out to us, and from there we'll be more than happy to provide a proper presentation and visit the farm and show you all about how we work with producers in the context of our services.
It's a great innovation and a great success story, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this progresses in the industry over the next few years. Pierre, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on the Back 40.
Thank you very much.
We've been speaking with Pierre-André Meunier from PrevTech Innovations today on the Back 40. You've been listening to The Back 40, brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance. Be sure to subscribe to The Back 40 wherever you find your favorite podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. The Back 40, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm Mike Bryan. Until next time, take care and stay safe.